I'm Dan Doney, the CEO of Securrency, and we have more than 60 developers here in Ukraine, in Kharkiv and Lviv. We're delighted to be here and talk to you about our product. If you haven't heard of Securrency, we're actually the first security token issuer globally. We started issuing security tokens in 2015. We have important patents on topics on asset-backed dividend-paying digital currencies before they were called security tokens, among other things. We're also supporting the Invenium token launch. It's a $260 million security token offering, the largest to date in the industry that's ongoing right now. So Securrency has been around, and you'll see that we have a number of important capabilities in this space. And I don't have cool socks like Zhenya had, but I am going to stay up here on stage in any case. And it turns out decentralized investment banking services are not a buzzword. They are here, as you'll see. You will soon see. You just click. Do you mind if you just... There we go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we got to this space. As I mentioned to you, we've been focused on security token offerings for some time now. And so how did we get here? Well, as you know, the blockchain space started with Bitcoin and other decentralized ledger tokens, which were the value is based on the utility of the underlying ledgers. What this really demonstrated was the ability to move value anywhere in the world, peer-to-peer, in just minutes and in some cases even seconds. It's a powerful transformative technology. It was also principally used in its early days for trafficking of all sorts, weapons and human trafficking, etc. So those days are to some degree behind us. But when you have a tool where there is where you have largely anonymity, you end up seeing misuse broadly across the tool base. What followed that was ICOs. Now, it's estimated, Zhenya mentioned before me, that approximately 95% of ICO offerings were bad offerings. 20% of the value that was contributed to these offerings was utterly stolen. About 80% of the offerings, 50% was fraudulent, and another 35 to 40% were just bad, not ready for prime time. There's a handful of good offerings in the space, to be sure. What this showed, though, was there's a powerful new way to raise capital. So if you don't happen to be from Silicon Valley or London or Singapore, there's a new way to access capital and raise funds for good ideas. And that was the promise of ICOs. But it turns out the mechanisms that are used to raise capital, the kind of vetting, the processes, the due diligence that's involved in capital raise is an important part of the process, and specifically investor protection. So when you're in a space that's dominated by anonymity, again, what you see is lack of investor protection, and the natural bad results follow. So the pieces that were missing in the previous space, again, was a lack of emphasis on compliance and anonymity. Well, it turns out if you can take and add those features into the blockchain space, if you can take and add identity and compliance, you can have a utterly transformative financial system. So who knows when the last major innovation in ledger technology, regulatory ledger technology was? There we go, that's right, the Medici family, as they introduced dual entry accounting. Dual entry accounting was the source for the financing that led to the Renaissance. So an entire rebirth of civilization occurred thanks to that small ledger innovation of dual entry accounting. We're in that rebirth today. So we're seeing a dramatic new model evolving, developing rapidly in the way that finance is done broadly. And banks are now paying attention as they see the writing on the wall that a new day has come. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about what a security token is. It's a representation of ownership on a distributed ledger. And in particularly, anything that has shares, whether it's shares of Apple, shares of a startup, shares of a real estate investment trust, etc., can be represented on a distributed ledger, which then gives it the properties where it can easily be traded or transferred anywhere globally. Now, unlike its predecessors, security tokens emphasize compliance. So it's built in. Rather than running away from compliance, we've embraced compliance, built it into the core, as you'll see. And then finally, what this uncovers is many benefits. Many folks know that liquidity is coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming as a result of these easy trades and transfers. But the other piece of this that's very important is accessibility. So you can now raise capital using these tools from anywhere. Really, it's not like the only good ideas are on the West Coast of the United States or other major regional centers. Good ideas come from everywhere, and now they can be financed. This is the big story. In fact, we suddenly have a self-regulating financial services infrastructure, one that allows efficient transactions. Okay, there have been major advances here. We're going to center and dig in on each of these for about a minute or two, but this is what's transforming the financial services industry, is advances in each of these areas. So the first advance is identity. So the global reach of blockchain, unlike individual banks, which don't have global reach, blockchain does. So what this means, to keep up with this, you need to have a global identity management system. So you have to do identity proofing at global scale, reaching folks who were previously unbanked and allowing them to efficiently come into this new infrastructure. There's lots of tools in this space that are available to folks. We tie these into our platform, and it allows us to actually bring users into the ecosystem for very little cost. The second component, ER, our smart contract developer, is the architect of this particular system, is here in the audience. And what our compliance-aware token framework allows you to do is bake securities regulations into the tokens themselves. This is really an extraordinary advance when a token knows what it's allowed to do. So it prevents itself from participating in a transaction between parties who are not known and qualified. We just demonstrated to the SEC and to the regulators in the UAE cross-border transactions that were self-regulating between two different regulatory frameworks and parties who are actually from various jurisdictions, all engaged in a decentralized trade and transaction. Additionally, we're ledger agnostic, so we're not tied to individual specific ledgers. This is a big deal because, as you know, ledgers are evolving very quickly. Zhenya pointed to this in his brief. And the last thing that you want to have is your company shares on a ledger that's now 20 years old, as your company has grown and is no longer the premier ledger. So by being ledger agnostic, these tokens can move across ledgers throughout the life of the security. One of the, you can't see this well, of course, but what this is actually a map of a US Reg D offering. So what we've done is taken the US securities regulations and mapped them into a nice, easy framework that's drag and drop and can be edited and changed. Even lawyers can read this particular language. This is published on-chain in bytecode, which is used by Policy Enforcement Point. It can be updated. So we took the regulations of the UAE, and within one day, we were able to map in their regulations, and this allowed us to engage in transactions across those jurisdictions, again, using decentralized policy enforcement. And then finally, because we have this perfect record of all transactions that are occurring in the space, because we know that every party who's involved in those transactions, we can see for the life of a share, all owners of that share. This makes it very easy for us to report to government regulators tax events, fraudulent trades and transactions associated with these securities, as well as mandatory CRS and FATCO reporting. This takes the burden away from issuers as they have a self-reporting financial service infrastructure. So idea creators can focus on their good ideas and not have to be securities experts. We also have some other tools in the space. The concept of a transfer agent. This actually allows, if people lose their keys in the space, we're able to pull back if they can prove their identity and prove that they're the rightful owner. We're able to pull back and reissue those tokens. This has a transformative effect on the way that custody is done. The recent events of the exchange in Canada that lost $145 million might be recovered, might not, are an example of why these kinds of tools and techniques built into the tokens make them ready for institutional value. And in fact, that's why we're central to the Invenium offering, which is designed for institutional investors. It's institutional investors that really bring the billions of dollars that we expect to come in this space in the next year or two. I'm going to show you a quick demo of our platform. How much time? Oh, great. Okay, so what we're doing here, this is our platform. We're going to show you how easy it is to issue securities tokens in the space. The user is registering their token symbol. This is the trading symbol of the token. So when you see it in your ERC20 wallet, you'll see it under this symbol. Here we've minted or reserved that name. Typically, there'll be some time between when you reserve your token symbol and when you issue. Here, it's just a matter of minutes. Now we're issuing, again, we're working with the World Bank as well. Here we're showing a World Bank bond issuance, and we're building into that bond issuance their handling restrictions. And within minutes, we're able to actually produce these tokens. So we've minted the smart contract associated with the tokens. We can then apply the securities regulations associated with the handling of these tokens. So we take our favorite recipe, attach this recipe. The recipe represents a particular regulatory framework. They can be attached to the tokens, and again, they handle all transactions associated with the tokens. It builds in and guarantees compliance associated with all trades and transfers. It's the reuse of these recipes that allow people who aren't necessarily experts in securities law to take advantage of precedent. So the 100 people who've issued tokens before you, you don't have to relearn securities law. You can simply use the policies that have been used before. Now we're actually conducting our primary market campaign. We call this single-click issuance. So I want to do my capital raise. I'm describing the parameters associated with the capital raise. When do I want it to occur? What base currency do I want to price my tokens in? What is the minimum ticket size, maximum ticket size, and how much capital am I looking to raise associated with my offering? I click a button, and the offering begins. I'm now uploading my documents associated with my token raise. So this is in the reading room component. So as investors come in, we have mechanisms. We qualify the investors, prove their identity, and then qualify them to participate in this offering. This is all built into our platform as we make this very easy. The investor goes through the reading room, signs the subscription agreement, and then pays in the currency of their choice, whether it's Ethereum or fiat or Bitcoin or Ripple for that matter. They can invest in the particular offering. So we handle all these details for the issuer, so you basically have a self-service security token offering platform. Here's where the investor can make their contribution. Okay, so it's that easy to actually bring your tokens to market. We also support secondary market trading on our platform. So we connect to various exchanges, both ATSs or MTFs. These are specialized security token exchanges in the United States and in Europe. So we allow for the trading by connecting to those exchanges. We also host our own decentralized exchange. So anything that we issue, we can quickly list. So from this, you get a global liquidity pool. We really make it end-to-end, the process, so that you can issue, trade, and then manage your security tokens. This is our upcoming brokerage platform. This is designed for institutional investors to actually manage their security token investments. So you can see in one platform, you can actually trade your publicly traded securities, private equity, debt offerings, cryptocurrency, and fiat. We're connected to AFEX, one of the world's largest fiat exchanges. So again, from one platform, you're able to trade all assets. Similarly, we have a more advanced trading platform coming with the new release. Okay, why is all of this important? What is the interest? As we came into this market in 2015, we saw a significant weakness in the market. We saw that we had an opportunity to fix the problems of 2008. This was my big concern, is how could we do securitization better? So if you've seen the movie The Big Short, you know certainly behind the scenes, in 2008, there was a global financial crisis, very nearly a global financial collapse. Why did this happen? We had massive mortgage-backed security pools that were backed by opaque and bad debt instruments that were underperforming, but no one could tell. There is no transparency in the system for folks to see that the assets that they owned were underperforming. In the blockchain space, we have a complete record of all transactions. So we can see each individual asset in the tokens that you own, what underlies those assets, and how they're performing. So we can fix the problems of 2008. If you're tracking this problem, since 2008, the reforms that were put in place actually make the system worse. In many ways, it's taken a too big to fail infrastructure and made it even too bigger to fail. There's early signs that we're about to face another liquidity crisis. If you're a financial analyst, you know that there was a recent yield curve inversion. Yield curve inversions precede major liquidity crises and most recessions. In fact, every recession. And we just had one a couple months ago. It usually precedes the recession by 18 months. So we've got about another 14, 15 months to get our act together. We think the liquidity and transparency that security tokens bring actually can be the solution to prevent or avert the next global financial crisis. So hop on board. There's lots of opportunities for security token, whether you're an investor, an issuer, in other words, someone who's seeking capital within the space, or someone who works in the financial services space. This is a revolutionary new space.